Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And first, can we start with the roll call, please? This is Sarah Pesic.
This is Rajesh Kapileshwari.
Lee Stackhouse.
Kira Williams.
Denise Terry.
I'm Stephanie Freed. I'm walking, which is why I am having issues trying to use my phone. I apologize. But hi, everyone here.
Kira is here. She put in the chat that her house has work being done, so it's loud there. So I won't force her to come on here if she would rather not. And then Helen Plowski on the staff support.
Great, thank you. And Helen, just so we know, did anyone else respond that you expect to be here?
Dane did, but I know that he does usually have conflicts. I'm not sure when their spring break is, so I was hoping it might be this week, but I'm not sure. And then off the top of my head, I think this is everyone who responded.
Okay. Okay, well, why don't we first start by adopting the minutes from the meeting in February? Does anyone move to adopt the minutes?
I move to approve it, adopt it.
Thank you, Rajesh. Is there a second?
Second. Stackhouse.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed?
Aye.
All right, the minutes are adopted. Thank you. Now, given who we have on right now, I was just wondering if we want to start, just in case we can't keep Denise for very long, why don't we start with the Green Jobs Group? And I know that, I'm not sure if Leah is going to be on. I'm not sure if her kid's spring break is this week either. But I'll go ahead and kick it off, and Lee and Denise, if you want to join interrupt me at any time, please. One of the things that we were just emailed about was that there is going to be, there is the expectation that there will be money coming through either through the infrastructure bill that is currently being proposed by President Biden, or what we had checked before was the stimulus money. There is a lot of talk about EV investment, so electric vehicle investment. I was looking specifically for anything related to green jobs and green job training program. I actually have not looked this week, except for just kind of reading through just general things about the infrastructure bill. But before, it didn't look like there was a whole lot of granular level information as far as things that we could kind of jump on and prepare as far as the green jobs in that stimulus money. However, I am going to have Helen do an update. Maybe I'll have you wait a little bit, Helen, to see if other people join, about some other funding that could come down the line that could also relate to the green jobs. I think that's really important to discuss. And there is someone that we had, that Helen had reached out to on our behalf, an organization called, is it Stand Up?
Power Up.
Power Up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever worked with them, Denise?
I was familiar with them prior, and I think they've got a new executive director, and I know Robert Leake.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not familiar with really what they're doing now or how strong they are. But I know, prior they weren't. I guess they kind of faded out, and I guess he's picked it up. That's what I'm thinking. So I read through the material, and I know he presented to the city council. That's all I know.
Okay. So for those of you who didn't see that message for the subgroup, Power Up is a subsidiary of the North Carolina League of Conservation Voters. They have some, like locally, they have some like a weatherization project to help. I think he listed like 5 homes are selected to be weatherized. And part of that was some job training. Someone got a job after going through a project, weatherization project. There's some, he listed some other things that are not necessarily related to the green job. So I won't go through everything else he said. But it does, I didn't get a strong sense of like how big the projects are, like whether this is something that is growing or like you said, maybe Denise, they haven't been doing as much. I didn't get a sense of that yet. I don't know. Did you have any different opinion of that work, Helen, from what you interacted with him?
Yeah, I didn't get any additional information. So, I mean, I'm with you. I am happy to reach back out and see if he could give us a better idea of maybe the details of that weatherization program, since that's maybe the most relevant part of it, as you're saying. So I'm happy to do that and at least keep your subcommittee up to date. And like I said before, I mean, he's already very involved with several city committees and in other ways. So he may be willing to come to a meeting as well to sort of explain that. But I'll leave that decision up to you guys.
Okay.
Are we open for other options as well, and other information and input on green jobs and what's trying to build? Because I'm aware of an organization that wants to start a program and teach and teach skills, but of course around doing things in a green way. I don't know how folks would get that information input.
Mm-hmm. So are you asking like how can that group that you're referring to get more assistance as they're going towards like a training program? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Well, how would they make themselves known to the sustainability committee if they would?
So my suggestion would be like for us to try to have like the subcommittee meet with them first.
Okay.
And because then we can like learn more about them and also see if we can provide any support for them, like
Right.
as soon as possible, you know? I think that would be great, Denise.
Yeah, it was something I was looking into. I'd just like to see if it's, we'll talk about it.
That'd be
Okay.
great. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, Rajesh.
I had received an email from my local ASHRAE, which is the engineering community for HVAC, that NCT and Department of Environmental Quality are looking for industry partners in the 2 or 3 county areas to host summer student interns. And there is a $400 per week per person through the CARES Act that will be directed towards this program for whoever is going to participate in. And I think that is related to the clean energy education, clean energy jobs, HVAC, and energy efficiency. So there is something going on. I can forward that email. So basically, these 2 universities or these 2 organizations are looking for industry partners to partner up with. So I'm not very clear on the details, but there is contact information from NCDENR and NCAT, NC A&T University. So I can forward that to whoever wants to pursue this further.
Yeah, send it to me. That'd be interesting. And
Yeah.
Do you know, Rajesh, are they looking like for the students or the trainees? Are they people who are already in some kind of program and then like, so say an engineering student will get paid to do an internship with like
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. So this might be an internship, or they also call it a pre-apprenticeship, depending on the partner needs. Now, my company would have been, if my staff is in Texas, but if we were the 20 people staff here and we could absorb 2 or 3 engineering students or even high school students who are wanting to pursue engineering jobs, we could hire them as interns. They would be paid through the CARES Act, through Ethos Engineering to them. So that's how I understand the program, but I haven't reached out to anybody because I'm not hiring over here. I'm hiring in Texas. So this is a North Carolina deal. So I can forward it to you and we'll go from there. Actually, I sent it to my son, who's an engineering student, saying, hey, follow up with people. They're looking for paid, and I mean, there might be paid internships out there for energy efficiency.
Actually, Denise, were you going to say something? Okay. Because just in case we don't have Denise the whole time, I wonder if would you guys mind if we interject Helen's funding opportunity things, and then we'll get around to the rest of the subcommittees, just because I think that also might, I mean, where there is money, we do have to pay attention because then we might actually get some. So Helen had, I'll set it up and then you take it. Helen had forwarded some information to our subcommittee that was specific to some funding that was coming through the governor's office. And so I asked her if she could just do a kind of a general overview to let us know, if we know how that money is getting distributed, kind of what the process is. And my first question is, do you know where that money is coming from? Is it coming from the stimulus? Would it be coming from the infrastructure plan? Should that pass? Do you happen to know that, Helen?
Yeah, that information is not as obvious, I'll say. That was not part of the briefing that we were given through our Cities Initiative group. But I mean, there are currently dollar amounts attached to these opportunities. But of course, we have to keep in mind that the General Assembly has to approve this budget as well. And so these may not be the final numbers, but because they're such large numbers, I'm thinking it is in some way tied to some of the federal funding. And so I'll just mention, I think, a few of maybe the more relevant ones, and then I'm happy to send you all the link, and you can sort of explore any of these in further detail. And there's a lot here. So I'm just picking a few. There are other ones as well. So one of them is Clean Energy Communities funding, which between the next fiscal year and the one after that is about $30 million to really target helping local governments achieve sustainability goals. And so that one really kind of seems like it touches on a lot of different topics. They do mention energy, transportation, energy efficiency. So, like I said, that one seems like it could cover a number of things. Then there's the Low Income Clean Energy Program. And this one will help expand clean energy and energy efficiency improvements to low income households specifically. So this one could be something that, especially that Equity and Green Jobs Committee keeps an eye on. It's meant to supplement also the existing federal weatherization program. So, sort of tying it into that weatherization pool that was mentioned before. And then there's a lot around the clean energy economic development, which is really meant to incentivize clean energy economic development and increase clean energy jobs within the state. So I don't know how much of that is going to be going to, I don't know how they're going to distribute that basically, but that's $10 million for that effort. There is an energy workforce support study, which also maybe relates to what we were just talking about a little bit. This one does only have $1 million. So that's a little lower end, but a portion of those funds will help support what they're calling pilot strategies for communities to shift more into that clean energy economy, which includes a number of things like workforce development and community engagement. And then one more that I think could be useful to mention, that maybe Denise, the group that you mentioned before, I'm not sure, but something to keep in mind at least is the clean energy workforce development as well, which that has right now about $4 million attached to it for supporting workforce training at community colleges, sort of in those same fields that a lot of this is meant for. So again, the clean energy, clean transportation, energy efficiency, and the general sustainability. So we'll keep an eye on this. I know, as I'm in the loop for the city's initiative group, we have folks who are working with the state, involved in the state, that really will know about this sort of as soon as it's finalized and where the money is coming from, where it's going, things like that. So, as most of it does seem to relate more to the equity and green jobs folks, you guys will definitely be the first to know, and I'm happy to continue giving these updates, of course. We got that news last week, so that's still pretty fresh, and the General Assembly does still have to look at it and approve it. So, but anyways, all good news at least.
If the money comes through, that's amazing news. If you could send if there's a link to that, if you could send that out to everybody, that would be great. And from your perspective, Helen, and is Johnny still on here? I will make Johnny weigh in if he wants to as well. For the things that are on that list, as you read through them, like your first thoughts, what are the things that the city right now is best positioned to leap on versus ones that would maybe require a little bit more preparation or like kind of advanced research or like a pre-planning kind of phase?
Right. Well, and so that's a great question because we are in the middle of the strategic planning sessions and efforts happening between department heads, upper management, elected officials. And so we're really starting to zero in on what their priorities for the next few years might be. And I know that there was some talk, some interest anyways, in some of those lower income energy efficiency type efforts. I know that that was discussed at least. And then for sustainability, environmental work, pretty general right now. So, I think because that's such a broad category, it'll be up to we're going to try to at least get a little bit more specific, but as of right now, I don't know what anything more specific than that might be. But yeah, I think that there may already be some interest in that, the low income energy stuff for sure, because that overlapped very well. So off the top of my head, that's where I think that they might be the most interested in this money. But that could change. Like I said, we're in the middle of that strategic planning. We haven't completed that yet. So once that's completed, or at least close to it, I think we're really going to be able to show some of the overlap there.
Ms. Plisk, I just want to echo what Helen said. She's correct in the fact that we're early in the process right now. I am aware that there is interest in addressing some of these issues. we will be able to give more clarity at time to hear from our elected officials as to where we're.
Sorry. It's exciting if this passes, and that, I mean, even if just a portion of it comes our way, that would just be fantastic and definitely wonderful for the whole state. Does anyone, before we like transition back to the subgroups, does anyone have any other questions just generally about this these funding streams that if you notice, for those of you who are on your phone, you might not be able to pull it up, but Helen put in the chat a link to this file. And Helen, do you mind sending the file, put it in an email for people who may not be able to pull it up on their phone?
Yes, I'll be happy to share that. And what I shared is actually just the ones related to the energy and environment. So what I'll also do in that email is send the link to where you can find details about other topics as well in the state's budget, in case you're curious or you want to look at maybe another area that might overlap somehow. But yeah, so I'll send all that information in a follow-up email.
Does anyone have any questions before we get back to the subcommittees?
One quick comment. I have been, from my work point of view, involved with monies, funding coming down from the feds through the states to the school districts and everything for coronavirus response and relief appropriation, CIRSA or something it's called. And the next wave for North Carolina, just for schools, is $1.6 billion. There's similar funding for universities, similar funding for city and county and state-related stuff. So a whole bunch of funding has flown down and is coming as we speak. So when there is funding, again, that means jobs, and are people ready? That's where the focus, I think, of the subcommittee is, that there might be jobs, but are they going to go to out-of-state people? Maybe. So we need to keep the jobs here. So, but it is happening. I've been a recipient of all these fundings for my clients.
Rajesh, is there a requirement in the funding through that program because I remember in 2008 or 9, there was a minority and business owner requirement. There was a American-made requirement. Are those same kinds of things?
Yeah, so generally for federal funding, yes, those requirements are there. And also the Davis-Bacon wage rates, which is, much higher wage rates. So all those requirements are there. But, what happens in my community in South Texas, most of the jobs go to Houston or Austin related companies that are more equipped to do that kind of work. And the local community gets left out because they don't have a trained workforce. And it is always sad to see the money going kind of outside the county. And that's what I don't know if our county is ready for it, but that's where the training comes in, right?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so getting back to the Green Jobs Subcommittee, is there anything that anyone else would like to comment, bring up on that? Okay, how about we go to transportation? Lee and Rajesh, would you like to give us an update?
We didn't meet this time, but we went through the comments that Helen had given us. And just 2 days ago, I kind of forwarded some more questions I had, just a follow-up questions. And basically, it seemed like our subcommittee should be focusing mainly on the EV, electric vehicles related transportation. And part of the thing is I don't understand Vista. It's not a part of the city, right, Helen? It's somebody else.
So it is. I just have a hard time explaining it. I'm going to be honest. It is, and but they are separate than our Department of Transportation. They are separate from PART, which of course is also not part of the city. But Yeah, they're a little bit more their own entity than any other like city department or anything. If that makes sense. Like I said, I alone already have problems describing. I'm not.
I went to their website and I couldn't understand because they have their own board and there was no connection between the city or the county or the state that I could see. They have links to all these places. So part Vista and the city. So that confusion is in my head. So what impact we can have may be limited. But my first questions used to be, what can we do with the buses? Don't know. That's part and Vista. Then the city fleet, we talked about it in our resolution already, that gradual conversion to better fuels or even electric. And it seems like 35 light duty trucks were converted in 2018. So it would be good to kind of document some sort of, reduction in carbon related to that, just so that we can advertise it. And there's a plan for 2021, 2022. We can advertise that as well. And if we can be of any help to bring it forward to the community or push it, we'd love to do that.
Yeah, and actually,
I like the idea that I think Helen actually. It was in our little summary that we gave last time, but policy surrounding EVs. I really like that idea as well, and see if by generating policy around these EV stations, can we energize it from that aspect? So I really like that discussion that was back and forth as far as the email pertaining to that.
Thank you, Lee. Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but while we're on the topic of the vehicles that got converted, that was part of a grant process, the CFAT, the Clean Fuel Advanced Technology Grant. And because of that, we are tracking the mileage of those vehicles. So we are already doing that. And it has to be, I want to say, for a 36-month period. So they were finalized in 2019. The timelines I'm not exactly sure when exactly they were finished being converted, but we are tracking some of that, the fuel data as part of that grant. So we do have that information. And then to Lee's point about the policies, this is something that a lot of other cities are doing as well. A lot of other ones, especially that have a lot of charging stations and infrastructure in place already. So I think that would be really, I'm glad to hear that you're excited about it anyways, because we don't have that here yet. But yeah, I'll let you guys continue.
Yeah, just where would they be and the number that they would be. So policies surrounding all of that, especially in certain neighborhoods within the city, in terms of equity as that and things of that nature. So I think that's a great idea as well.
I have a question about charging stations while we're on this. So I know, Helen, you mentioned that you've applied to, I think you said Duke Energy for a EV pilot program.
Yeah, we haven't done it yet, but it's due at the end of this month. And
what would that, let's say you're chosen, what would that mean? What would you be getting?
Yeah, great question. So this program is actually one that we've known about for a while, but Duke finally finalized it. And so we're in the Duke Energy Carolinas territory. And so they've sort of broken it up based on territory, what is available. So in our Carolinas territory, I don't know how many counties that is, maybe 15 to 20. So it is a pretty big area, maybe even more than that. Anyway, so within Duke Energy Carolinas, there are 100 level 2 chargers available, and there are 24 DC fast chargers available. And so this is a Duke Energy program, meaning that they will pay for every part of this, from the installation through maintenance, warranty, networks, all that. They will be charging a fee for customers when they plug their vehicles in, which right now the city doesn't do. But it also requires no match, no funding from the city because this is Duke's program. So the applications are just us telling them where we would like to see charging stations. And then that, whatever criteria they have on their end is sort of how they're going to sort through these. And right now, I also know that the county is going to be applying for some locations as well. I'm not sure which ones they've settled on. I think last I spoke to them, they were at least thinking about the downtown branch library. And so ideally, we'd be able to work with the county to sort of hit some of the major spots. And we've also considered some other locations downtown or potentially near parks, things like that, where it makes sense for people to spend some time while their cars are charging. So that's the idea of that program. And that is separate from the NCDEQ Volkswagen Settlement Fund, which of course they're still only in phase 1, will likely apply for phase 2 as well once that opens up. So yeah, we're really on top of that application process for those charging stations right now.
And I think there'll be more money from the federal government as well, because Biden is pushing every city more than 100,000 population will get all these funding measures. So that would be, I don't think that has been determined yet, but that is coming down. So my question to the city is, do we have a line item budget item every year towards EV, irrespective of funding or grants? Or is there a wish list that if grants were available, we could use X number, or we could use X dollars, number of dollars? Is that something we could work on to be ready for this in case?
So I'll say it this way. All of the EV or alternative fuel vehicle efforts that we've made have been grant funded in the past. And because of that, and then also because of all of the ongoing opportunities through grants, it's really hasn't been a big enough expense for it needing to have its own separate line item at this point. I think that if we were to start developing policies and maybe a plan of where we wanted to end up, like X number of level 2s, X number of EV charging infrastructure in general, like whatever it is, I think if that was done, that level of research, that it might trigger somebody to think, oh, okay, this is something that needs funding for a longer term. But again, because we're still working mainly off of grant funding, except for the one at the tennis court location by that roundabout by Salem College, we're replacing that through some capital funds. So that's getting replaced this year, but that's the exception, I think.
Any new construction projects or major renovation projects that the city may be having, like new fire stations or police stations or whatever, it could be a good idea to kind of make it a requirement to have at least 1 or 2 spots as part of that. I know that's a building kind of thing, but having that.
Yeah, I think it's not as much building thing. So I think that that's sort of where, if you set the policy that new construction needs X number of spots for EVs, I think that's exactly sort of where your conversation is leading. So yeah.
And we're looking at around $4,500 to $5,000 per level 2 charger. At least that's what I've seen so far. But as time goes on, maybe that becomes cheaper. And it just depends on, the location, site and everything. But
yeah,
a lot of money for a multi-million-dollar construction project to have a $4,500 charging station. But yeah, that was one of the items that was on our list. Then let's see, the multimodal transportation, again, that Vista part, all that gets confusing in my mind. But say the Biden plan also releases some money for light rail or downtown mass transit trolley system. Would it go through the city or would it go through Vista? And are they ready, or whoever, are they ready for it? Do we have a study done and a plan? I know study was done and a plan assuming funding becomes available and we have to quickly react, that would be a good thing to have. So that was one of the questions. Let's see, I haven't gone through all the pedestrian and bike meetings to see how they're doing and what they're doing, to see if we can offer anything. Probably not. The last question I had was resilience. As storms come or tornadoes come, is there a plan for the city as it relates for transportation to make it more resilient? And if not, could that study be in the near future?
Yeah, to that point, what I'll say is that kind of plan or research sounds like it would almost be not better served, but a good place for that would be if there was something like a climate resilience or vulnerability assessment done of the city, which would take into consideration the resilience of various types of infrastructure, not just transportation. So, you know, that is, I've considered that. That is a larger plan for sure. I would even say that is the type of plan that we would need to contract out with a third party, just based on the size and the depth of the study that would really need to be produced. So it's not out of the question, definitely, but I think the best way to look at that is as of a bigger part of a potential vulnerability assessment. So yeah, it could be something that happens down the line at some point. I don't think but I can't say for sure either that any of our transportation groups haven't considered that. I don't know if they have, to be honest. I know that a lot of planning does go into that, and I'm sure a lot of research helps them put their plans together. So I don't know what they have.
I wonder if that question of resilience, climate change, adaptation, et cetera, would be a valuable addendum to our report out for this committee, and draw attention to it and say, you know, this committee does not have the capacity to do that kind of evaluation, but we feel it needs to be done. It needs to be taken seriously. And it doesn't have to be an official thing, but like, we recommend that the city council does X, Y, and Z, whether it's another big community committee like this, or maybe lay out a couple options. Say this is really important, it needs to be done. And then that, I feel, would give Johnny and Helen some more, like, have another voice of support, and even tie in like those other areas like you just mentioned, transportation, and because goodness knows,
water, electricity, everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I spent 3 hours before leaving for vacation yesterday with a sump pump in my house. That's what's happening in our neighborhood, is just an excess of water.
Yeah.
And I know that we're not the only.
And today now we have like 35-mile-per-hour winds. So, I mean, but yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think that a plan like that, or, if we were able to get any kind of movement around that, would be really important for our city. Just recently, I know that, and I may have mentioned this in the last meeting, I can't keep track anymore, but I recently saw something related to how, a lot of planning, a lot of emergency planning, infrastructure planning is based off of historical events. However, that is no longer accurate because the climate is changing at such, as we're seeing, like such extreme events that we thought were 1 in 100 years or 1 in 500 years are now happening way more often. And so I think that something like that from this committee would maybe help open some minds, some eyes, some ears, to thinking a little bit more holistically about keeping and making sure our city is sustainable and resilient for the future.
Okay, great. We'll do that in that report.
And we can find out who else has done something like that. I know the Department of Defense is big into resilience, and some of the federal departments are, but we can find out.
Yeah, a lot of cities actually have vulnerability assessments now. So I may be able to find a few too if you guys would like me to share that.
Yeah, that would be great. Just for guidance for whomever the people who would be doing that would be. That also, I mean, we still have Professor Stackhouse on. So, I mean, I always think of, what are these projects? What are the projects that would be really great for students to work on? And, anything to do with assessments, mapping, those are always really good kind of capstone project-like things, especially when it takes a lot of person hours to collect the data. Okay, we have, Lee and Rajesh, did you have anything else you want to add for transportation?
Not I, thanks. I'm done.
No.
Kira mentioned that she had to pop off, so I'm not sure if, I see her name, so I'm not sure if she's here, but could we do a report out on recycling? Do you have anything
That's me, Stephanie.
Stephanie, oh, sorry.
No. And Allison.
Allison, you're here, yay.
Yeah, but Allison,
the other person on the... Hello, I'm sorry. I just want to let you know I heard the question raised. The other person on the phone is Dane. I'm sorry I showed in late. I was at a High Point doing college touring with my son, so
good.
Had to put on dad hat today. So
welcome, Dane.
I apologize.
Okay, Stephanie, would you be able to give us a recycling update?
Sure, I can give you an update that we did not have a lot of time to update much in the last round of time. I would welcome kind of a more thoughts on what's the priorities are, and I'm still kind of just confused about how to kind of make things happen. Since this isn't our full-time job, where are we making choices about doing things? And then if we're going to do something, how do we do it? If that makes sense. So I think I'm feeling a little bit of a hesitancy to kind of get invested in any next steps because the time is limited and I don't know where to kind of focus my energy. I don't see the bigger picture yet of how to kind of motivate my own energy to develop something into it, for the next step. It feels too broad. It feels broad at this point still. We had some specific ideas, but I'm like, is that our priority or not? And, so I would welcome any ideas on how to kind of move from the kind of ideation stage to a more, practical steps, I'll say.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Stephanie. And Johnny, I wonder, do you have advice on this, from your experience working with other committees? How do you prioritize and take things to action instead of kind of sitting in our own thoughts?
I think the most important thing to do is, I see you all are already beginning with this brainstorming process, which is important, and we don't want to limit your thought. And I understand that there are situations where you may not know what the next step is, but the communication from the committee to the staff will allow us to be able to give you more guidance. So in other words, some of those things that are broad right now, if we can talk about those, then that would enable us to be able to give you some feedback. Well,
and I'll also add that, as I'm on these subcommittee calls. That's really what those are there for. And so, Stephanie, I'll just speak to one of the examples that you guys came up with in your January meeting or December meeting, whichever it was, about the video series, for instance. I know that that was a topic that seemed to interest both you and Allison, and I thought that that was a great idea. I think that is still a good idea. But you, what would be helpful, I guess, from my end, and I maybe should have made this clearer, but for me, the way I think that if we were going to get that done, the role of this subcommittee would be helpful if they were to identify the conundrums that they want to address, at least at first. I know that Allison is going to be rotating off the committee soon. So I know that there will be some changes for sure, but I'm still willing to work with you in the meantime on that. But, you know, if you're able to get me some of the ideas more concretely, you know, I think that would help move the action part of it forward, because I think I also told you in our subcommittee meeting, you know, we have access to our marketing and communications team. Granted, they do have a busy schedule, but they've always been helpful and able in the past to help us create things like these videos. And so I think that, you know, as long as we're able to take those first few steps in doing some concrete compiling of data or information or questions, that would help. So I hope that sort of gives you a clear understanding. And of course, I'm happy to spend some time with you on a call or on the next subcommittee meeting to clarify that further. I'm happy to do that. So yeah, just keep in touch, please. And don't feel, or just feel free to always ask me these questions whenever. It doesn't have to be at the committee meetings either. So yeah, I'm easy to get in touch with, and if I miss a call, I'll call you back or anything.
Yeah, no, it's more like I only have a limited amount of time to commit to this. And so it's
Right.
like, okay, within that time frame, what can be done? And if Allison's going to be moving off, rotating off, then like,
Yeah.
there needs to be like, I probably should know that. And, you know, be like, does somebody else want to jump on with me in that?
Right.
I mean, it's fine. I just didn't know how to move it forward, so I just didn't do anything.
And I think
it can't be all on me, you know?
Yeah, maybe a good or an easier place to start is even just asking your fellow committee members if they have questions that they would love to have answered about recycling, and then we can like start the videos based off of their responses before we try to get like a larger audience, just because everyone's in the same boat here on this committee, you know.
Yeah.
These are not your full-time commitments. So
right.
But yeah, we can always start there too. So
yeah. Okay, great. I'll plan on reaching out to everyone with the document to get that going.
All right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Dane and Kira, do you have anything to update us on? Is that your hand?
Dane, I muted you. I'm so sorry. I don't think I can unmute you. Oh, I know he was on his phone. Gosh. Okay. Sorry. I may be. And I know Kira had to step away for the contractor, so I don't know that she's actually still on or not.
Okay. Well, maybe if Dane pops back on, we'll go back to him. So Helen and I spoke a little bit about am I forgetting anybody, any subcommittee? I don't think so. Okay. We talked about the requirement for the report out for the city council and discussed there's not exactly a guideline. It's not like there's this particular format that we have to follow, which is, I guess, means we can do whatever we want, but also means that, like, what do we need and want to do? So we discussed maybe shooting for about 2 pages. Bullets are fine. It doesn't need to be 2-page single-space narrative. So my goal is in the next 2 to 3 weeks is to gather, and I'll send out kind of some specific questions to each subcommittee, like just to give brief overviews of the areas that you've focused on, but even if it's also things that you've explored that you're no longer exploring, I think that that's also important to capture, because it may be that the city's already applied for grants for that, or it's out of the purview of this committee or whatnot. But I'll give some guidelines, and I'll ask each of the subcommittees for that, to then craft it into a unified document. I need to get it to Helen in beginning of May, we'll say, in order to get it to the city council after that. So I will send something out to you. It will definitely not be until after Easter, but with more specific questions. And I'll also include, some of the things that we discussed today that would be valuable for kind of putting in their minds. If they're reading it, we want to kind of plant some seeds, especially if we're talking about like the climate change and resilience and stuff. Kira is back. Kira, do you have anything to update on as far as your subcommittee?
No, I don't have anything to update. I believe I sent Helen the document that we were working on. And so that pretty much designed a timeline for the next 2 years. So I'm depending on Dane to reach out to his colleagues and others in the educational field to reach out to those schools to help or at least commit to including doing research on canopy coverage within Winston-Salem. So there are really not any updates because we've created the timeline, and Helen gave us the feedback. So I don't know if Dana's had a chance to reach out to anyone, but I can't hear.
Kira, yeah, sorry. I told the group that I did mute Dane. He had some background noise, and I don't know that he's able to unmute. So he might have some updates, but I maybe have messed it up. So
okay, no problem.
Sorry.
Dane, since you are censored apparently, if you can hear us and you have something you can report, even if you just like send a quick message, email sometime, to give us any update beyond what Kira said, that would be great. Okay, for the last few minutes, Helen, do you have your B-City update? And Creek Week went well?
It did, yeah. It was a hybrid this year. So they got to do some in-person things, some virtual things. But from what I understand anyways, it went great. The Great American Cleanup is still happening in a couple weeks. So it's technically a part of it, even though it's a few weeks behind. But yeah, so for the Creek Week, I believe Jennifer did a couple of presentations during that week for the garden club. Then this year we incorporated even more native perennials into our flower bed program through Keep Winston-Salem Beautiful. So that pushes it. Now we have 6 native perennials in that program. And then a new program that's a part of B-City this year, or will be sometime later this summer, is starting up a library summer reading program. So I think that will be more geared towards kids and getting some kids involved. And then I hope Dane is at least able to listen in. I think this is an exciting one, is that we're going to be starting on a pesticide management policy for 2021 right now is the goal. So that's
he will definitely love that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so I hope he at least can hear that. But yeah, so I'm sure I'll have more updates about that, especially once we get going on that. So that's the Bee City stuff. And then the last update I want to give. We do have some members that are ending their first terms technically in May. So there are 5 members, and those are Allison, Angela, who's actually even leaving the state. She's moving to Florida. So those 2, Amber will be rotating off, Denise and Dane. And so a few of them have requested reappointment. So I think I put it in the email I sent to you all. It's really mostly in the hands of City Council, but we'll see. And also just to clarify, those members will still continue on until we have a replacement for them. So it could take a while. There may be a gap in, when we're able to get applications and get them officially appointed. And then of course they can also still stay on their subcommittee groups until then as well. So we'll definitely thank them all for being part of this first inaugural group of the reintroduction of this committee, and hopefully we'll still be able to keep in contact with them, and I think there'll be some great resources moving forward. So definitely thank you to you guys. It looks like only Dane is on here, who is one of that group, but yeah, so I did just want to update you guys about that, and then also encourage. So, at some point, everyone will be rotating off. You can only serve 2 consecutive terms. So I do just want to suggest and recommend that, if you find a topic that you are really passionate about, and that there may be options for you on other committees in the city. So there's the Urban Food Policy Council is a good one to look into. The Community Appearance Commission, they're a city-county commission, and they even have a Trees and Woodlands subcommittee. And that's also one of the groups that helps plan community roots day. So that could be a good one. The Bike Ped Committee, all the other transportation committees, Human Relations, which does some fair housing and equity things. So, if you're so inclined, just remember that there are options if you're going to be rotating off. So yeah, that's all of the updates from sustainability.
Great, thank you. Because it's almost 6, I want to close the meeting, and then I do have a follow-up EV question that I don't know that everyone necessarily needs to hear. So if you want to hear my EV question, stay on. I would like to adjourn the meeting. Does anyone move to adjourn it?
Yeah, I'll move to adjourn.
Any second?
I'll second it. Stephanie.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Well, thank you all. The meeting is adjourned, and we will see you next time. I'll be in touch with the email after this weekend. So if you need to hang up, please do.